December 19th, here is your update about what's going on in the war in Ukraine. With uncertainty about ammunition and just funding in general in America and Europe, the armed forces of Ukraine have had to limit the number of artillery shells and other ammunition that they're spending across the battlefield. And this is already starting to show as a major flaw, unfortunately. The Russians around Bakhmut, at a place called Ivanivska, were able to just storm a position pretty much without any resistance or very little resistance, simply because of ammunition shortages. And as a result, Ukrainians died and Ukrainians were captured in that assault. In Ukraine, a private company has started manufacturing drones called Cobra drones. They are very inexpensive. They can fly 300 kilometers at 150 kilometers per hour, and they can carry a 15 kilogram warhead. They're calling it the Ukrainian Shahed. It's very cool because they're very cheap. They only cost $2,000, and this is interesting. It's great that all of this innovation is going on, but we have to note that Russia is also doing the same thing, and they're outperforming Ukrainians in almost any level when it comes to manufacturing drones. The number for FPV drones that Ukraine has been able to, or is supposed to be able to manufacture, is 50,000. The Russians are able to manufacture 250,000. So there is some drama here in Ukraine surrounding a New York Times article that was published 3 days ago. It's about the counteroffensive in the south, on the left bank of the Dnipro River. They are calling it a suicide mission. They're saying a bunch of sensational things. You can just read the article if you want. Do I agree with them? No, but they're not wrong, because in my opinion, it was very sensational and very one-sided. There's a lot of things that they said which were kind of just Russian talking points. There are a lot of things that they ignored, which was kind of weird. And if you want to be fair, you have to have a balanced discussion. But, war is hell. This is one of those places where it's literal hell to be. I mean, they're being bombarded with FAT 500 bombs and fucking, there's a lot of Ukrainians dying there, but there's a lot of Russians dying there. I mean, the Russians, if you want to have like a ratio between the Ukrainians and the Russians, I have no idea what it is, but it's pretty high. The Russians are dying like flies in the forests around the settlement. So do I think it's pointless? I don't know. The famous commander of the Birds of Magyar unit, Robert Braudy, he said in a video yesterday, capturing the emotional impressions of military personnel is normal. Okay for a Netflix movie. Okay. Filming them for a generalized rant about our position is a shameful and criminal manipulation of conclusions and public opinion. Conclusions about the fallacy of the military plan using the example of human misfortune. Okay, that's also very sensational. But he's not wrong, so I think the answer is somewhere there in the middle. He was also talking about drones in general. He says Russia have 5 to 10 times more conventional FPV drones. I mean, that's crazy. That's for every one drone, there's 10, up to 10 Russian drones. General Valery Zaluzhny, the head of the armed forces of Ukraine, was in an interview talking about mobilization. He wasn't talking specifically about mobilization in that interview, but there it was mentioned. And his answer was very peculiar. It is still a little early to evaluate recruiting. Okay. And as for the issues of mobilization, it's not just that it needs to be strengthened, but return to the limits, to the framework that worked before. I have no idea what that means. but it's being talked about. And I just see it on the horizon, but that's just me. In Rostov, in Russia, on the Morozovsk airfield that was attacked by Ukrainian drones the other day. During the attack, it's said that there was only one Su-34 that was damaged because we just had that one singular picture. And then now some information is saying that there were 10 Su-34 that were damaged. That's very much unconfirmed. We haven't seen any satellite images, at least not the open source intelligence community that I follow. So this is only, rumors maybe, but if true, it's a big chunk of change for the Russians. The defense minister of Russia, Sergei Shoigu, said somewhere, I think I just saw it on Telegram, so bear with me. He said, according to external threats to Russia, the number of troops will be increased to 1,500,000 servicemen. That is bonkers. But if that's their goal, to have 1.5 million soldiers, that's ambitious, to say the least. Now they have 470,000 in Ukraine. But I don't want to underestimate them. If you would have told me, like in January this year, that at the end of the year, if the end of the year they're going to have 470,000 soldiers in Ukraine, I would have laughed in your face. I would be like, what are you smoking? They're not going to be able to equip them, train them, push them, all of that jazz. Well, turns out they're not equipping them or training them or doing anything, but they're just putting them here, handing them a gun and say, run this direction and shoot everyone. And that seems to be working. It's easier to mobilize a bunch of people if you're not training them or equipping them or almost feeding them or whatever the fuck they're doing. So I wouldn't ignore this. The West might, but I wouldn't ignore it. See you tomorrow.